I've heard other miners kind of try to diversify their revenue streams by going into other things like AI and other sources of computation. Are you guys planning to do anything like that over at Marathon, or are you just strictly, Bitcoin focused?
So our philosophy at the high level is we're asset allocators, right? So we have
Mhm.
capital provided by our shareholders, and we need to be really good custodians of that capital. And so we need to invest it in the things that we think are generate the best return for our shareholders. We have studied AI, and being a boomer here, I've been in tech for 40 years. I started my career writing software on punch cards in banks, on old IBM 360
So cool.
mainframes, which gives you an idea of how old I am. Granted, I was in high school at the time, but and I have developed technology that was, Ethernet technology that was core for the original internet build out and the build out of all these PC connected LANs and WANs. Built token ring technology, built switching technology, saw the internet grow, was involved in ad tech, game tech, all these industries as they've grown.
Wow.
And the one thing, and I was a big, contributor to some of the early IoT stuff over 20 years ago. Um, the one thing I've learned is never invest in the first generation.
Hmm.
And what you have going on in the AI space relative to data centers today is you have this race to build capacity to do LLMs, large language models, and inference. And what people are doing is they're taking the state of the art processor and building these data centers around these GPUs. So the H100s, typically the NVIDIA product. And so the challenge with these HPC AI sites is that the GPUs need to be interconnected. So if you have a cluster of GPUs, every GPU needs to be connected to every other GPU for it to work properly. It's the way the brain works, right? You have neurons that connect everything. And that means that you can't build a field of containers that's flat, because the distance from one container at one end to the container at the other end is going to be longer than the two containers next to each other. And so you need symmetrical connections, same length. And so you
Hmm.
want to build these data centers almost like spheres. And so it's like a 3-story building that's 3 stories wide, kind of, right? That's the
Yeah,
ideal
you're
way
gonna
to
see
build
them. They're
these,
very
right?
symmetrical. Yeah.
So building a data center for AI is 8 to 12 times more expensive than building a data center for Bitcoin mining. The only thing they have in common is they both need lots of energy.
Hmm.
Period. End of story, right? The other thing is the H100s. Now let's talk about the technology curve. H100 was the hot machine, 12, 18 months ago. Everybody's ordering them, right? What does Nvidia do? They launched the H200. Right? Look at what the
Hmm.
hyperscalers are doing. They're not buying H200s. They're on to the next generation. A lot of them are developing their own systems. So if you're going to operate a data center for AI, you've got to be thinking about 99.99999% uptime, 5 nines, right? You've got to be thinking about, how do you cool these things? You can't immerse an H100 or an H200 in oil. You've got to liquid cool them by cooling the individual chips. Now you are using a lot of water, by the way. If you then start looking at the operation of these sites, it's very people intensive. This stuff breaks all the time, and you've got to have a really fat internet connection, right? Because it's big data. This is high velocity, high volume, high resolution data that's got to get connected here. It's not a couple of Starlinks on a remote site somewhere that's burning methane. You know, these are totally different businesses. And so I think any Bitcoin miner who says we're going into AI and we're going to be the best at this, it's going to be a flash in the pan, because
Wow.
they don't have the capex to be able to finance machines where the obsolescence is going to be every 12, 18 months for the next 5 years. So I
That's
wish them
fascinating.
luck. I
Yeah.
wish them luck, but I've been in this industry long enough, the tech industry long enough to know that if you get involved in the hype curve, you're going to crash into the trough of disillusionment before the business really starts working. And we're going to see so many improvements in vector databases, which increase the efficiency of these systems by 100-fold, which means, guess what? You need 100 times less compute power all of a sudden to do the same thing. And as this technology curve continues to advance, look at what happened to PCs, right? What was the way that Intel built their business? They invested in software companies that made software that needed CPUs to be more and more powerful, because otherwise there was no need to buy new CPUs. What is NVIDIA's business model? It's selling chips and software. How do they sell more chips and software? Well, they find new ways to sell new chips and software, which means the people installing a lot of this stuff, it's not going to last them 5 years. It's not going to last them 8 years. They're going to be obsolete in 18 months.
Yeah.
And the
It's gonna
CapEx,
cost a
like I
lot.
said, is 8 to 12 times more expensive than Bitcoin miners. So I think that you really need to be careful as a Bitcoin miner about going down the rabbit hole of HPC, because it's going to be a very short-term project for you, I think.